What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Nice little 11 gamer here tonight. Refreshed after a couple days off. There's only 2 NBA games tonight, so a little bit bigger slate than usual. No one told DraftKings. No one has contact information for FanDuel. So, the GPPs are a little bit bigger on DraftKings than a normal Tuesday. I will give them that. There's no point in complaining about it anymore. This is a pretty good slate. There is one massive total, and we're going to hit that right off the bat. And then everything else is pretty spread out. Looking through top stacks, there's some interesting chalk spots that I do not like, but, we'll talk you through it. Hook 'em horns. What's going on, Cliffy?
Yeah, it's the only college hat or college team I've ever had a hat for. I don't know why. Like, it goes back to the Vince Young Texas days, I think. Anyways, not a whole lot. I didn't play last night, but a fun slate of games. Watching the Rangers get manhandled at home by Chicago, while my Montreal Canadiens managed to pull out a shootout win over Anaheim. I don't know what's going on with the Rangers, man. I just don't know how much longer Laviolette's going to last.
That's the issue, right? Because we were talking about it in our Discord this morning. It's like it's essentially the same roster that they took to the Eastern Conference Final last year. So I don't know, man. Like, maybe he lost a lot. Did you watch the Rangers game? Did you watch it, or?
I only watched like half the first period, and then I watched the Habs game after.
Mika Zibanejad looks lost. So, I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to, talk about the Rangers too much on this slate because, I'm already angry enough. No, but interesting slate here. You just mentioned to me before we came on that there's no one on a back-to-back, and there's none of these teams playing tomorrow. Like, that has to be one of the first times in a long time. I don't remember thinking about it now. I just think about breaking down the St. Louis Blues against the Arizona Coyotes 5 straight days during the COVID bubble season. So that's the only thing I think about. So I don't think it's happened recently. We'll have to go look, but
yeah, I would have to dig into the schedule planner that I use, but this doesn't happen very often. It's nice for goalies. So even if there are goalies that aren't confirmed, you have a pretty good idea of who's going to go. You don't have to worry about, late. I mean, you always have to worry about late scratches and stuff like that. That's why we say pay attention to the Discord. But, you have a pretty good idea of who's playing where. So we have most of the information, which isn't usually the case.
Yeah. Thank God the Rangers aren't in this slate. I cannot agree with you more. Namesake. That's all I'll say. Let's get into this slate before we do. Just wanted to give a thank you to you guys for just being here, hanging out with us, supporting us, liking the show. Never make you go premium, but if you do want to go premium, click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. It'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. I don't really know the NBA schedule. I know their whatever midseason tournament is coming to an end next week or something like that. So NHL is in full swing right now. There's an MMA card this weekend, the last of the year. It's really about it that's going on. Obviously, NFL on the weekends. So we'll see what's going on. Let's get into the slate. Let's start with a doozy, shall we? San Jose Sharks with a 2.2 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 4.2. The Sharks traded Blackwood to Colorado for Georgiev, amongst other pieces. Georgiev will be backing up Vitek Vanacek tonight. Carolina decided to load their top line, and of course, in this matchup of all matchups, they are together. They're a minus 530 favorite in some spots right now, maybe even longer since the last time I checked. But Carolina going Sebastian Aho, Martin Necas, Seth Jarvis, second line. their second line at home is usually the Stahl line with Martinook and Svechnikov. And then there's Drury, Robinson, Blake, Roslovic, Kotkaniemi, Carrier. Like outside of the Aho line, the only one I'd maybe consider here is the Stahl, Martinook, Svechnikov line. Now Jarvis they're very good. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen with Svechnikov there. I do worry a little bit that some of these, the Stahl, the Kotkaniemi, and the Robinson line are not going to make it through the game as is. I also worry that the Aho, Netchus, Jarvis line won't stick together, but that's always a concern with Rod the Bod behind the bench. As it stands, Aho, Netchus, Jarvis fully correlated at 21,900, 20.4% top two stack, 11.3% projected ownership. They're fully correlated. This is probably the best power play spot on the night. It's just a matter if you want to play them, right? They're 21-9. You have Colorado 1 at 23-8 in a great matchup. You have Edmonton 1, 20,600 in a good matchup against Tampa. Tampa top line is 23,900. Minnesota top line is 20,200. You also have Florida, the Leafs. There's just so many teams, right? This is a great matchup. Like, I'm not sure what I want to do in single entry. I always worry about playing the Carolina Hurricanes in single entry because they're the classic come for the expected goal, stay for the shutout. But it's Vitek, Vanacek, and net. This is the best power play spot of the night. They're coming in with positive leverage. They're not the most expensive line on the night. The stars are aligned. It's just a matter if you want to play them or not. I think a Svechnikov one-off makes a lot of sense here as well. If you want to use a filler line, you can use the Stahl line as a filler. You still get Svechnikov on the top power play unit, but it's hard to stack the Canes here without using their power play guys, and their top line's fully correlated. So really, this is a Carolina one game for me. I do really like them. I haven't built yet, but they're definitely up there with if I'm going to spend up between Colorado, Edmonton, and Carolina. On the Sharks side, no, thank you.
Yeah, I don't really have interest in the Sharks side. If I was playing a 150 lineups, I might be interested in Toffoli, Wenberg, Cunnin, just because they won't see a lot of that Stahl line, and there's power play time there. But I just don't have interest in them seeing even 20 max. So out on San Jose, Carolina. The Carolina power play is very good. The San Jose penalty, I think that's the one thing that I would take a little issue with is it's not awful, right? The San Jose penalty kill, they're not good. Don't get me wrong, but this isn't Detroit Red Wings, you know what I mean? Who are just absolutely abysmal. And this isn't even the Columbus Blue Jackets. And we'll get to them a little bit later. They have been fine enough. But I don't think it's good enough to really slow down Carolina's power play if they're clicking, if that makes sense. That's why, I kind of agree it's the best power play spot because I think it might be the biggest disparity between the quality of the power play and the quality of the penalty kill, because the only other spot that really comes to mind is Columbus. Philly's power play on the other side is just not very good. So I do like Carolina one here. I will note, I was looking at how Aho and Jarvis have managed together at 5-on-5 over the last couple of years, or I guess last 2.5 seasons, I guess. Aho and Jarvis are at about 3.2 goals per 60 when they're together. Aho is at about 3.0 when he doesn't have Jarvis. So it's better, but it's not substantial. Maybe Martin Necas makes a difference there, but at 21,900, if I'm paying that much for a line, if I'm paying over 21K for a line on DraftKings, I want ice time, right? I don't want 18, 19 minutes, even in a smash spot like this. I want 20 plus easily, you might get from Toronto, you might get from Colorado. So if I'm going between which super expensive line do I want to play tonight, I don't think it's Carolina. They're perfectly fine. They're in a great spot. Great 5-on-5, good power play matchup, all that stuff. good 5-on-5 numbers. Like there's nothing wrong with them in a nutshell. It's just when I compare them to other expensive lines, like I just think that there are other spots that I'd rather play. So Carolina 1 is fine for me. All of Carolina is basically in play here. Like this is a good matchup for them. I would have a little bit of interest in dipping down to Carolina 3, that Svechnikov, Martinook, Stahl line. Like it could be one of those games where the ice time gets spread out relatively evenly because they're expected to win this game like 5-1 or something like that. So I could see even Martinook and Stahl playing 15, 16, maybe 17 minutes if we're lucky. So like I have no problem going down to them. They're in a good spot. I have no issue with Carolina whatsoever. It's just when I look at how expensive they are and the other expensive lines on the slate, it's like, do I want 18, maybe 20 minutes at the most if I'm lucky, or do I want a guarantee of like 21 to 23 minutes like you might get with Colorado 1, most of the Toronto top line, most of the Edmonton top line, like those types of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I always do worry about Carolina for that reason. Like Cosmo said in chat, Carolina could put up 5 goals and get goals from all 4 lines. That is a legit possibility.
I would have to look. I'm pretty sure there was a game last year. Carolina put up like 6 goals or something like that. And I think, or 5 goals, and every goal came from a defenseman. Like that's just kind of the style of team that they are.
Yeah, that is in the back of my mind. That is a reason, like, if they were 19-2, something like that, around there, it'd be a different discussion, right? Like, I think they're in a great spot, but like for 1,900 more, you can get 24 minutes from Nathan MacKinnon. You'll get for right around the same price, 22 minutes from Austin Matthews. You know what I mean? So like, can they get there in their 17, 18, 19, 20 minutes? Yeah, it's the Sharks. It's Vitek Vanacek. It's just like, it's a question you're going to have to answer for yourself because they are fully correlated. They do have a very good power play. It's just like they're kind of priced in a range where you want at least 20 minutes from. Like your point is good about that. So it's just like I'm not sure what to do because they have the highest total on the slate by far, by half a goal. Like that's a lot. So it's just like they're a very, very confusing spot. I'll just leave it at that. Let's talk about those Avs. Colorado Avalanche, they 3.7 total. Heading into Pittsburgh, the Penguins have a 2.9. Colorado going McKinnon, Rantanen, and Lehkonen. Colton, Nichushkin, Middlestat. The bottom 6 doesn't really matter. Pittsburgh going Crosby, Rust, Raquel, Malkin, O'Connor. And Tomasino is a game-time decision. If he's out, it will be Cody Glass. Once a prospect in Nashville, Cody Glass. Top line center for Chalk Donkey Nashville, Cody Glass. This is one of the reasons why I'm struggling with Carolina, right? Because for $1,900 more, you can play Colorado 1. You know McKinnon, Rantanen, and Lehkonen will all play over 20 minutes. Pittsburgh is atrocious defensively. They have a semi-decent penalty kill, but Colorado's power play can run anyone over. Like, it doesn't matter. Crosby, Rust, Raquel, their 5-on-5 matchup, trades chances at best. Now, so does McKinnon, Rantanen, and Lehkonen. So, like, I think, in MME, you got to consider Pittsburgh 1, but, like, Colorado 1 is the highest top 2 stack percentage of the night, 31.6%. Their ownership is 16.9%. They even have more positive leverage than Carolina. Their goal total is half a goal lower, but let's be honest, Carolina's a way more complete team on offense. Colorado is just their top line. Their second line can definitely score, and their bottom 6 sucks. So, like, I don't want to flag plant here, but I'm leaning towards I like Colorado 1 more than Carolina 1, despite them being more expensive. I wish Nichushkin was on the top line, but I'm not going to argue with it. You want to go to Colorado 2? I don't particularly love it at 15.6, especially with the season Casey Middlestat has had. So really, this is a Colorado 1 game for me. You want a one-off Valeri Nichushkin. I think a one-off Valeri Nichushkin is always in play. But really, it's Colorado 1. On the Pittsburgh side, it would just be Pittsburgh 1, and that's more of an MME type deal because they are 19,200. I don't know if Mackenzie Blackwood is going to be starting tonight. I didn't see the goalie update there. It could be Wedgwood.
It's Wedgwood starting.
Yeah. I mean, he just shut out the Devils. So, like, goalies are weird mythical creatures, but I would consider Pittsburgh 1 an MME from the pure fact that McKinnon, Rantanen, and Lehkonen also trade chances, and Colorado's goaltending hasn't been great. They're in the bottom 10 of expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. So I think Colorado 1's an interesting play in MME, but this is the Colorado 1 game for me. Pittsburgh 1 in MME, sorry.
Yeah, I do like Colorado better than Carolina here tonight. Just it's a minutes thing. Like the last couple of weeks, it's 22 to 24 minutes for these guys. McKinnon's over 24 minutes. McKinnon's also been shooting more over the last few weeks, which is something he wasn't doing earlier in the season. So definitely get those shot bonuses in. Pittsburgh top line with Rust and Raquel there, 3.1 expected goals against, 3.2 actual goals against. Like those numbers are 30% worse than league average, 35%, something like that. So it's a really, really good spot here for Colorado 1. Sorry. Pittsburgh doesn't take a ton of penalties. That's a little bit worrisome. Like you said, their penalty kill, it's not atrocious. It's not good, but it's not atrocious. But this is a 3.6 road total, right? Like that is a pretty massive number. I really do like Colorado there. Definitely one of my favorite top lines on the slate. So Colorado 1, not in on Colorado 2. I do think Ross Coltonback does make a difference for that line because now you have two pretty good wingers that can support Middlestat, even if Middlestat's not having a great year. So I do think that makes a difference. But at 15,600, like I'm not going to stack that line and just not play anybody from Colorado 1 like that. Not in a single entry. That's not what I'm going to do. So it's Colorado 1. On the Pittsburgh side, like I think Pittsburgh 1's in play, but at 19,200, they're definitely not cheap in that price range. You look elsewhere on the slate, you have Devils, you have Minnesota, there's Edmonton, Toronto, certainly. So like there are other options. The Pittsburgh top line's being good, not elite, like 3.1 goals per 60. And they don't get the minutes you think that they might get, right? Because it is a perfectly correlated top line and there hasn't been a lot of scoring depth from this team basically for 6 weeks now. They're still only playing 19, 20 minutes a game. Like they're not playing 21 to 22 minutes, right? So I think they're fine. I would have a little interest in Pittsburgh too if Tomasino is in because he can definitely help drive them offensively, but single entry, I don't think I'm going to get there. For me, I think this is a Colorado 1 game.
Yeah. Toronto Maple Leafs with a 2.8 total heading into New Jersey. Debatable if that's fun. The Devils have a 3.2 total. This is an interesting game because there is no ownership on it. As my internet decides to not be good for the first time in a while. But Matthews, Marner, Nyes, because Domi could be back. So, like, if Domi's back, they're going to go Matthews, Marner, Nyes, Nylander, Tavares, Domi. And then Pacioretty would be down on the third line. This is a tough matchup for Toronto. Going into New Jersey is not fun. Jonas Siegenthaler and Jonathan Kovacevic have been one of the best defensive pairs in the league, may I dare say. They're going to be glued to Matthews tonight. Like, if you still want to play them in MME, I think that's fine. But at 21-7, I'm definitely just going to go to Carolina. If I have the extra 2,000, I'm going to go to Colorado. I think I prefer Edmonton to Toronto. So I don't particularly love Toronto 1 in single entry. In MME, you can do what you want with them. They're coming in with under a 10% top 2 stack, which is very rare for an Austin Matthews line, especially one that's that expensive. It's just hard to get to in single entry. Tavares, Nylander, Domi. Like maybe, but they're 18-4. It's not a great power. The Devils side much more either, though. Like I want to, but it's a decent power play matchup. So if you want to get to Hughes, Bratt, Palat, you want to leave off Palat and add in Nason. Like that's more of an MME type deal for me. I don't really love this game in single entry. I think my favorite thing in this game would be in MME would be some sort of Devils power play stack, but I don't really love this game.
Watch for warm-ups, not only just because of Domi, but yesterday in practice, Max Pacioretty was on the top line. And Max Pacioretty was on the top line in the last game as well. Nyes was on the second line. Domi was taking his spot at times, but like it feels like we have to pay attention to what that left wing spot is going to be for Toronto in warm-ups. I'll start on the New Jersey side. I get why they're doing what they're doing because the third and fourth lines for the Devils really hadn't been good for a while. I mean, it's one of those, like basically since October, it's one of those things like it's not, costing them their season or anything like that, but there are games where making life harder on themselves. So they moved Stefan Nason down to the third line because Dawson Mercer hasn't been playing well. And you and I bag on Cole Sillinger in Columbus because we think he's pretty overrated, especially compared to how the team uses him. I feel like Dawson Mercer is New Jersey's Cole Sillinger. He's had stretches where he's been super productive. He's done that playing largely alongside either Nico Hischier or Jack Hughes. He hasn't really done that in a depth role. That's why they had to take him off the third line and put him somewhere else. It's because he wasn't really doing anything except getting run over basically game in and game out. Dawson Mercer largely in a third line role. Looking back, like his last 17 games, he has 7 points. Like he's just not been doing anything to contribute on the third line. And moving into the Hischier line doesn't help Hischier. It helps Mercer. And there is a difference. I was looking at their numbers together over the last few years. Nico Hischier's goal rate at 5-on-5 with anybody on his line except Dawson Mercer is 3.6. With Dawson Mercer, it's 2.7. Literally goes down 25%. That's a lot. I think I'm out on that line. Meyer and Hischier are good enough to support Mercer. Mercer's not good enough to make them an elite line, if that makes sense. So I would probably go to the Hughes line. The Hughes line has been scoring more. Hughes has certainly been shooting a lot more. Jack Hughes, 60 shots in his last 15 games, averaging 4 shots a game. Bratt and Hughes over the last couple of weeks, averaging 20 to 22 minutes a game. They're not going to see much of that Matthews line. So, the Matthews line is a little bit more high event this season, but they're typically pretty good defensively. So I kind of like New Jersey one here, especially where they're not priced up amongst the super expensive lines. They're not getting any ownership, 2.9%. Like I'd rather play them than Pittsburgh one here. So I don't mind New Jersey one. On the Toronto side, if it's Nyes on the top line, I would have a little bit of interest in that line. They are very expensive. If it's Pacioretty, I mean, the reason why you might want to play him if it's Pacioretty on the top line is, it's $1,700 cheaper, brings him down to $20K. It's a lot more reasonable. Like I said, Mercer is going to make that Hischier line worse. It is still a bad matchup for Toronto. I would be more interested in one-offs. One-off Pacioretty. I think, one-off Nylander or Austin Matthews is certainly always in play. I think I'd be interested in some one-offs from Toronto, depending on what the rest of my roster looks like, not so much in stacking.
Yeah, it is pretty funny that the Devils refused to include Mercer in a Timo Meier package and then also had to ship Sharon Govich out to keep Mercer. And now he's going to be dragging that line down. Good stuff, Devils. There's some bad GMs out there, man. Philadelphia Flyers, the 3.3 total, heading into Columbus. Our Blue Jackets, the 3.1 total. I woke up a little late this morning. First thing I see on Twitter Greg Ehrenberg, doing his bets with his $100 bankroll challenge. No NBA today, so he's doing NHL bets. The first thing I see is Kent Johnson under 2.5 shots, minus 190. I'm not a betting person. Like I'm not huge into betting on shot props. That hurts the soul, man. Ken Johnson's my boy. We're gonna have words. Nah, but Columbus going Monahan, Ken Johnson, JVR, Marchenko, Fantilli, Voronkov, Sillinger, Olivier, Zach Aston Reese. Holy moly. Flyers supposedly going Konechny, Couturier, Farabee, Tippett, Michkov, Frost. Now, this is an interesting game. Like I don't really love these Columbus lines. I know Ken Johnson scored twice the other day. I just don't particularly like. I understand them going Marchenko, Voronkov in between Fantilli because they want to get Fantilli going, and that's probably the line I would go to if I was playing Columbus at 13-8. They're a little bit negative leverage, nothing crazy. That would be the Columbus line. It is Sam Ersson in net. He is probably their best goalie. I say probably because he was pretty awful to start the season. I don't know if it was injury related or not. But if anything, on the Columbus side, would be Marchenko, Fantilli, Voronkov. You want to go to Monahan, Ken Johnson, JVR. Like, they're the same price, and I want their best wingers, and that's Marchenko. As much as I love Ken Johnson, it's Marchenko. So that would be the line there. On the Flyer side, there is some pretty heavy ownership on the Couturier, Konechny, Farabee line. It is price-driven, but the Flyers also have the second highest road total, and it is a very good power play matchup. The Flyers' power play sucks, but they're 14,400, 5.2% top two stack, 13% projected ownership. The issue, again, that I've run into with the Flyers is Torts going to blow up the lines if they're losing 1-0 in the second period? And I think the answer is yes. And I think Couturier and Konechny is a safe bet to play them, like, as a two-man. Like, I know Farabee has been good on that line. I just don't trust Torts to keep him there. If you want to go power play stack, leave off Farabee, you can go Michkov. I think that's a fair thing to do. I think a Tippett one-off is fine. Konechny one-off. I think the safest thing is Couturier, Konechny two-man if you want to go more than just a one-off. But it's so hard to trust Torts, especially his quotes in the media today, asking them about last game, saying how much the game sucked. So, like, you could get to warm-ups and the lines could be completely different. So just be aware if you are playing the Flyers, because Torts loves the Torts, and this is a perfect opportunity for Torts the Torts. So just be aware. But I do like Philadelphia one here.
Yeah, I'll start on the Columbus side. I mean, Monahan's been really good this season. I think him and Ken Johnson could be good together. I still like James Van Riemsdyk. I'm not sure against most top lines I would be playing James Van Riemsdyk at this stage of his career. Like, even against that Flyers top line, like I do like JVR. I just don't think he should be playing top line minutes. That's one thing I worry about. I think Marchenko, Fantilli, and Voronkov is where I would go. Fantilli's best numbers this season have come either with Chinnikov or Marchenko. They haven't played a ton of minutes together, but 67 shot attempts, 3.9 goals per 60, shooting 11.5%, which is a little high, but certainly not extreme or anything like that. Voronkov and Marchenko both on the power play. So I think that's probably where I would go. The problem for me is, like, they're priced. They're not quite filler priced, right? They're 13,800. They're not quite like mid-priced stack. Like, I don't know exactly what you would probably play with them. Like, you would be looking at like a 17, 18K line. So, like, if you're playing Columbus tonight, you're looking at Boston, Vancouver, Los Angeles, like the Colorado second line, the Toronto second line, like that, those types of things, maybe Pittsburgh. There's just not a lot that appeals to me that I would pair them with, if that makes sense. So I'm not believe it or not, I'm not super jazzed about Columbus. Like, I think Columbus can win this game easily. And like, this is the line is pretty close. It's a high total. Like, they're going to score. I suspect they're going to score some goals. It's just, if I'm making a single entry lineup, like, who do I put them with? Like, there's just not a ton that really interests me. So would be the Marchenko, Fantilli, Voronkov line. I'm going to be honest. I think I like the Flyers side better. I agree with you. Like, if you're, I mean, we're all worried about lines changing. Konechny, Couturier would be the two man to go to. They've been really good with Farabee, 3.6 expected goals, 3 actual goals per 60. Couturier and Konechny play 19 to 21 minutes pretty regularly. So you get good ice time with them, reasonable price. I agree. You can move up Mitchkov. I think the other thing you can do if you want to save a bit of money is just put Bobby Brink up there. And I'm going to be honest, the way that I'm building my lineups here tonight, I don't mind that Flyers third line. One, you get Bobby Brink on the power play, which is, always a boost. The other is Brink and Noah Cates have been pretty good together this season. 2.8 expected goals for per 60, 61% expected goal share, 3.8 actual goals per 60. Like, Bobby Brink, every time I watch the Flyers, like, obviously Konechny and Mitchkov, they stand out pretty regularly. The guy after them that is always noticeable to me for creating offense is Bobby Brink. And I've watched way more Flyers games this season than I'd like to admit. I kind of like that Philly third line. If you're playing super expensive Colorado, super expensive Edmonton, super expensive Toronto, those types of things, Carolina, like, I think that Philly third line, like a two-man of Cates and Brink and Forrester, something like that, is a little bit interesting to me here tonight. So I kind of like the Philly side better just because of the pricing thing. I think this might be a spot where I go look for my cheap guys to play with my expensive guys.
Bob Brink will score a goal and then get benched. That is the Bobby Brink way. Los Angeles Kings with a 2.8 total heading into Long Island. That blows. The Islanders have a 2.5 total. That also blows. There is a lot more ownership than I expected on the Islanders here. This is the worst possible 5-on-5 matchup you could have in the NHL. Kings lead the league in expected goals against at 5-on-5 per 60 minutes in the NHL. That Nelson line still almost 8% projected. I am out on the Islanders. As Cliffy says, if you want to play the Islanders, go fill your boots. It will not be in my lineup. The Kings side, at least, is a little bit more interesting. And it would be that Danault, Laferriere, Fiala line at 12.5, 1.2% top two stack, 3.4% projected ownership. A little bit of negative leverage, but any line worth playing at that price usually will have negative leverage. That would be the line for me. They have been excellent. You want to go to Kempe, Kopitar, Trevor Moore in a mid-range build type of deal. I think that is perfectly fine. You obviously can't fit them with the expensive guys, but if you're going to fade the lines 20,000 and up, I think, they're good for a mid-range build at 15.9. You need a cheap one-off. I think Warren Fogle or Quentin Byfield is fine, but it would be the Danault line for me, and I'm out on the Islanders.
I'm going to be quick here. I just really don't have any interest in this game. If anything, for me, be Fiala, Laferriere, Danault, like, small sample. They have been good together. 3.8 expected goals per 60, 4.5 actual goals, 55 minutes together. Fiala's playing a lot on the power play. Here's the thing. Both teams top 10 by expected goals against a 5-on-5. Both teams top 10 by fewest goals against a 5-on-5. Both teams under 2.3 power play opportunities per game over the last 31 days. So these are two really good defensive teams at 5-on-5, have been all season. These are two teams that are drawing almost no power plays, and these are two teams with pretty bad power plays. We can go to the next game. I don't have interest here.
Yep. We look forward to the 7-5 final.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Calgary Flames with a 2.4 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 3.1 total. Forsberg, Stamkos, Gustav, Nyquist, 14,600, 7.7% top two stack, 21.6% projected ownership. Like, it is Dan Vladar in that. It is the Flames. But at that ownership, I just can't do it with Stamkos at center. We talked about the reasons why on the last slate. My dogs are barking at the trash can that opens the door itself. It's just, they're idiots. Kind of like the Nashville front office. But I don't know. Like, if you want to play them. But in that price range, right, at 14,600, you have, hold on, my computer is, in that price range, right, you have that Flyers top line right there. They're chalky as well, but not really as bad as that Nashville top line. And they've been good. You know what I mean? You have that Columbus line a little bit cheaper. You have Utah a little bit more expensive. You know what I mean? Like, they're not priced as a filler. They're a top line, obviously. You can't fit the big boys in with them. And they're getting 3x their ownership to top 2 stack with Steven Stamkos as a center in 2024. Bacon, relax, big guy. Come on. You want to come up? Come up. But I do not have a ton of interest in Nashville here. If you want to play them in MME, you got to, for me, if I was playing 150, I'd either be under the field or way over the field. Coming in at the field just doesn't do anything for me. This is a very good matchup. They have a 3.1 total, but at that ownership on an 11-game slate, I don't particularly love them. On the Calgary side, like the Kadri Huberdeau Pospisil line is coming in pretty heavily over-owned, 1.4% top 2 stack, 7% projected ownership. For that reason, I'd go to Backlund, Sharangovich, Coronado at 11-3. I don't mind them as a filler. Again, this is not a game that I'm going to be heavily targeting in single entry. I don't particularly love it. So, if anything, it would be the Backlund line on the Calgary side. Nashville one, I guess, is playable, but in my single entry, you won't see them in my lineup.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, I don't have interest in playing 20+% Nashville. It honestly, it doesn't matter what the matchup is. It just is what it is. Like, this has been a team that's, like, we're over a third of the way into the season. I'm not going to keep playing. Like, eventually they are going to get better. But does getting better actually mean good, or does getting better mean we're not a 60-point team, we're a 75-point team? Like that's kind of my argument here. No interest in all that ownership. For me, it would be more about the Calgary side. For me, it would be the Sharangovich, Backlund, Coronado line. They are coming in as a filler stack, 11,300, 2% ownership, a little bit. They are coming in over-owned. Nothing extreme. They have been pretty good together. 2.7 expected goals for, 2.1 against per 60 in their time together. They're not scoring yet. They're also only shooting 3%. Backlund lines are typically low shooting, but 3% is a little bit extreme from him. I don't mind that Sharangovich, Backlund, Coronado line. I think I would prefer, I might actually have Calgary players in my lineup tonight. I haven't made my lineup yet. There's certainly a consideration. I think I'd be more interested in one-off Sharangovich, one-off Zari, one-off Coronado, something like that than full stacking. I don't think there's a full stack in a single entry that I like on either side of this game.
Yeah, I'm always interested in Sharangovich as a one-off, so yeah, he could be in my lineup. Obviously, have not even come close to building yet, but let's move on. Boston Bruins, with a 2.6 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 2.9. This is another game where I don't have a ton of interest, and neither does the public. The highest owned projected line per our top stacks would be Winnipeg 1, Connor Scheifele-Velarde at 19,300. I think in MME, you could have a little bit. They are fully correlated. Boston has gotten better defensively. They still take a fair share of penalties, so that would be the reason to play Winnipeg 1. They're kind of priced in a range where I don't want to prioritize them, but, Flowchart says if they're in a bad matchup, you play them. This isn't the best matchup. I think, in MME, getting 3-4%, your 150 is fine, but nothing I'm prioritizing. On the Boston side, I don't have a ton of interest. in any of the lines. I'll never say no to a Pasternak one-off as long as he's in, but he is probable for tonight. But this is a brutal matchup despite the blue line issues for Winnipeg. 2.6 road total. So it'd be a Pasternak one-off, a Marchand one-off, but really that's about it.
Yeah, the funny thing about the Bruins is that with the way that Winnipeg runs their lines, right? Like you're probably going to see the Adam Lowry line out a fair bit against the top line for the Bruins. What kind of sucks about that is that it's the Bruins second line that's actually been pretty good defensively. The Bruins top line has been fine, but not as good. Like this is actually a matchup where you would want Winnipeg's top line out against the opposing top line because like Boston 2 is really good defensively with Lindholm, Marchand, and Brazeau. Even the Boston fourth line, if Winnipeg goes out against them, the Boston fourth line's legitimately been good this year. Like there are worse matchups in the depth than there is against the Boston top line. So that kind of sucks. Boston's not taking as many penalties anymore as they were earlier in the season. That's something else I noted. Like over the last few weeks, they're about a half power play allowed per game lower than the league average. So they're taking fewer penalties. They've gotten better since they got rid of Jim Montgomery, but the improvements, particularly the defensive improvements, started before Montgomery got fired. I suspect this is going to be a fairly low-scoring game. You know, obviously, if you're playing a ton of lineups, you might want something on either side. But again, this is another game where it just screams kind of like 3-1 for one side or the other, or something like that. And I don't really have interest in stacking a $19,000 Winnipeg line if I think there's going to be 4 total goals in this game, or an $18,000 Boston line if I think there are going to be 4 total goals in this game. So I just don't have a lot of interest in stacking really anything here.
Yeah, me either. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have a 3.6. Tampa going Kucherov, Point, Gensel, Hagel, Paul, Atkinson, Geeky, Gonclaves, Chaffee. Cirelli is out. Edmonton going McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, Kapanen, Podkolzin, Skinner, Henrique, Janmark. This is an interesting game. Tampa 1 is the most expensive line on the night, which still doesn't make sense to me. They have no business being more expensive than Colorado 1. They have a higher top 2 stack than the Edmonton top line, but like I cannot get there in single entry with Colorado, with Carolina, with even Edmonton there. Cheaper. You want to one-off Kucherov. That is fine. I know they've been better. But I still can't full stack them with any confidence in single entry. MME, I think they're an interesting spend up option to get over the field. They're coming in at 1.7% projected. I think having 5, 6, 7% is an interesting play there. But in single entry at that price, I just can't do it. Hagel one off, fine. Interested to see how he does without Cirelli on the line, but the sample is tiny right now, so we'll find out. Edmonton 1 is very interesting to me at 20,600. The price discount is still there. 14.3% top 2 stack, 9.1% projected ownership. Like Tampa's not the best defensive team. Like they're not awful, but they're not scary, especially without Cirelli there. You know what I mean? Like that top line trades chances. That second line's not going to be great. And, McDavid, Hyman, McDavid plays so much that he's going to see a whole bunch of everybody. I think in my top 3, if you put in Colorado and Carolina, the third, and this not in any order, the 3 that I would consider in single entry would be Carolina 1, Edmonton 1, and Colorado 1. It's just a matter of how comfortable are you with your build with any of these guys. So, I do really, really like Edmonton 1 here. It's a decent 5-on-5 matchup. Vasilevsky has struggled specifically with high danger chances. So, I'm in on Edmonton 1 here. I do like Tampa 1. It's just they're priced in a range where I can't get to in single entry.
Yeah, like if I'm paying nearly 24K for a line here tonight and I have the option of on the road in Edmonton or on the road in Pittsburgh, like I'm going to take Colorado on the road in Pittsburgh. Like that's just kind of the way that I look at it. So Tampa won, like, they're still playing very well and they're still getting good minutes. This is the one thing that kind of concerns me is the Oilers don't take penalties. I was looking over the last 6 weeks, like over the last like 4.5 weeks, especially, even going back 6 weeks, there are 3 teams that have kind of separated themselves from the rest of the league in terms of giving up the fewest power plays per game. And they're Vegas, Seattle, and Edmonton. Edmonton's at like 2.1 power play opportunities given up per game. Like it's just Tampa might get 2 power plays. It's just really not a lot to go off of. So as long as, knock on wood, as long as Edmonton's goaltending doesn't fall apart at 5-on-5, they should be all right here. So I do have a lot more interest in the Edmonton side. Like that Tampa Bay top line, 2.9 expected goals against, like they're not that good defensively. Cirelli being out hurts Tampa. I've been noticing that Hagel's defensive numbers are still pretty good without him over the last couple of years. It's, believe it or not, it's the offensive numbers that hurt with Cirelli out. And I think it's because they don't have another, like, remember Steven Stamkos was there. He was taking a dive at 5-on-5. Like his numbers fell apart. Nick Paul's not a good offensive player at 5-on-5. I just think it hurts Tampa's offensive upside on their second and third lines more than it hurts their defensive ability, particularly on the second line. So it would be Tampa one or bust, but it is the Edmonton side that I do like better. Like they are a lot cheaper. I said it on the last show, Zach Hyman's numbers, like on the low end, he should be a 30 goal per 82 game guy since his return for the rest of the season. So, maybe he scores like 19, 20 goals. On the high end, he could probably score like 30 and 50 games. That's just the kind of underlying numbers that were supporting it. So I really do like at least 2-man of McDavid and Hyman. Throw in Nugent Hopkins if you want. Tampa Bay's penalty kill has been good. Edmonton's power play has not been consistent this year. That's the one thing that does worry me. But where neither team is really taking a ton of penalties, I'll take the line that's $3,300 cheaper, whatever it is, and that's Edmonton 1. They're at 4.1 goals per 60. It's the same rate as Tampa's. It's the same rate. The only difference has been the power play production. And with Edmonton's history, I got to think they figure it out eventually. So I'm in on the Edmonton side. If you want to take off RNH, put in Draisaitl, I think that's perfectly fine as well. But it's certainly Edmonton 1 that I like best in this game.
Minnesota Wild with a 2.8 total. Heading into Utah, the Soakers have a 2.8 total. This is an interesting game from the Minnesota side. I'll start on the Utah side. I don't have a ton of interest. This is a pretty brutal 5-on-5 matchup. It is a decent power play matchup. Like, I'm not going to full stack anything in Utah, but if you happen to get a one-off Genther, a one-off Keller, one-off Schmaltz, something like that, so be it. You know what I mean? Other than that, I'm not interested in stacking anything on the Utah side. The Minnesota side is a bit more interesting. And it obviously is that top line. Like, they're a one-line team right now. Rossi, Boldy, Kaprizov, 20,200, 16.2% top 2 stack, 12.1% projected ownership. They are fully correlated. In their small sample together, they have been excellent. They have been shooting a bit hot, but they still are. They still have a 3.5 expected goals per 60 together in their sample. This is a very good power play spot. Utah takes a lot of penalties. They don't have a great penalty kill. I do really like Minnesota 1 here. If you can't fit up, I think a Rossi one-off is fine because unlike Joel Eriksson Ek when he was in, Rossi has been shooting the puck. I think a Kaprizov one-off is fine. I'd probably just full stack if I do play Minnesota. I think Marcus Foligno is a fine. Like he is on the power play at min price or near min price, so he'll play 14, 15 minutes. he gets on the score sheet on the power play, you're laughing. So don't mind that. So Minnesota won. Minnesota power play. Don't really love Utah here.
Yeah, Minnesota 1 is interesting just because of the power play spot. Utah is taking a ton of penalties. I was looking over the last 31 days. Most power play opportunities given up over the last 6 weeks. Most power play opportunities given up. The Utah penalty kill, they're not Detroit level bad, but they're not good. So this is a pretty good power play spot for the Wild. It's not a good 5-on-5 spot. That Utah top line has been really, really good this season. I think one of the more underrated top lines in the league. 3.2 expected goals for, only 2.3 against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're about 10% better than the league average defensively. And Karl Vejmelka has been great for Utah. I was looking at goals saved above expected from Evolving Hockey earlier today. There are 33 goalies with at least 750 minutes this season. He is third by goals saved above expected per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. The only goalies ahead of him are Lucas Dostal and Connor Hellebuck. Like, he's ahead of every other goalie in goals saved above expected per minute. He's been really good. So as long as Utah doesn't get in trouble on the penalty kill, I think they should be fine here tonight. So while Minnesota 1 is in play, I think for me, they'd be more 20 max, certainly MME or something like that. Cause like they're coming in with 12% ownership. Edmonton 1's at 9%, same price. Edmonton's at home in a better matchup. I'll just go play Edmonton. That's just kind of the way that I look at it. So Minnesota's fine. Nothing against them specifically. It's a decent power play spot. I just don't think it's a good 5-on-5 spot, and they're facing a goalie that's been, at least in a small sample to start this season, one of the better goalies in the league. Utah is kind of interesting here. I don't have a ton of interest in playing them. It is a good power play matchup for them. The top line has been really good. They're only 15,100. Like, remember earlier in the season, this was a line that was like 18, 19K. That price has gone down a lot. Now, they're not getting a ton of minutes, which is a little bit of an issue, but 3.5 actual goals scored, 3.2 expected goals scored, 2 out of the 3 on the top power play unit. Schmaltz Keller still getting 18 to 19 minutes a game. They are priced a little bit in no man's land. If I was 20 maxing tonight, I would be tempted to have at least one Utah lineup, because while I do think this ultimately ends up a low scoring game, and I think in my single entry, I don't think I'm going to have either side here. They have been a really good top line, and it is a good power play spot. So all they need is just one game where Minnesota's kind of off, and they can fill the net. So if I'm playing a bunch of lineups tonight, I'm considering certainly both top lines, but I think I'd be more in on the Utah top line considering their price.
St. Louis Blues with a 2.5 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3.1. Thatcher Demko is confirmed tonight. He will make his season debut for the Canucks. Quinn Hughes expected to play with his mask or whatever. St. Louis reuniting Thomas Buchnevich and Kyrou. Our top stacks does not reflect that, but that line would be 15,000 even. JT Miller skated today for Vancouver. He is not expected to play. He is expected to play on Thursday. Anytime Kyrou, Thomas Buchnevich are together, I will have interest by default. They are fully correlated. This is a pretty miserable matchup, though. Would be an MME type deal for me, 15K for a mid-range type build. Someone is at my door. So my dogs. Let me kick it to Cliffy and see what's going on here real quick. Sorry.
Yeah. The thing is the St. Louis top line was actually doing fine, at least offensively, with Jake Neighbors there. So it's one of those things, like, I don't know how much better Jordan Kyrou will actually make them. Like, that St. Louis top line with Thomas Buchnevich and Neighbors this season was at 4.2 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Obviously, I don't think they would stay that high, but even like 3.5 goals would be really, really good. And I don't think Jordan Kyrou can make that a whole lot better. So considering where the offense was and the price difference, like Jake Neighbors is $2,600 cheaper than Jordan Kyrou. Again, considering the way that St. Louis's top line had been scoring, I don't think that this can make them a whole lot better than what it was. And they're all still perfectly correlated on the power play. So all you did was just take a line that was doing well offensively and made them $2,600 more expensive. I think one of the reasons why I would be kind of interested in St. Louis is like if Demko's not back, right? Like back, you know what I mean? Like playing, because like last year, he was legitimately one of the best goaltenders in the league. That was actually one of the best goaltenders in the league after he returned from injury in January of 2022, I think it was, 2023. So it had been a while where he'd been one of the top goalies in the league. But if he's a little rusty or something like that, maybe he lets in a couple softies, I would have interest in St. Louis. But I had interest in the Blues when they were, when they were basically priced as a filler. Now that, with Kyrou on the top line, with that line at 15,300, they're no longer a filler. They're priced in with the Utah top line that I just talked about. They're priced in with, that perfectly correlated Islanders line. They're priced in with Philly. They're priced in with Los Angeles. Like there are just other lines that I think I would rather go to. So I think with that change, I'm out on the Blues. On the Vancouver side, I think it would be the top line or bust. I mean, they are perfectly correlated. They are fairly expensive, $17,500. I think they're fine. I would probably have a little bit more interest in one-offing some of the cheaper guys, like one-off Garland, I think is certainly in play, one-off Sherwood, than I would be in outright stacking Vancouver. Like I feel pretty confident saying I'm not going to have either side of my single entry here tonight. So I think Vancouver 1 is probably my favorite line in this game now that St. Louis 1 is so much more expensive, but I'm not running out to play them here. Vancouver doesn't draw a ton of power play opportunities. St. Louis certainly doesn't give up a ton of power play opportunities. So they'd have to look like a 1 for 2, maybe 1 for 3. It's just with the price increases basically on both sides, I think I'm kind of out here.
Yeah, the price difference is a pain in the ass because at 12.6 or whatever it was, 12.4, they're priced as a filler, and I would have had interest by default. At 15K, you're just kind of like, I have to do mid-range build, and that's fine, but I'm not going to do that in single entry. So now you're talking about making a lot of lineups, and that's the only real reason I'd get to any St. Louis. Florida Panthers with a 3.3 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 2.6. Seattle back at home after their East Coast road trip. That Shane Wright, Tolvin, and Bjorkstrand line went absolutely nuclear on an island game on Sunday. You truly do hate to see it because we do really like that line.
And who was that against, by the way?
Johnny Quick. Anyway, they look great. The Rangers suck. But on the Seattle side, that would be the only line I have interest in. And that's specifically only for like if I'm power play stacking one of the expensive teams or need a filler, like a Shane Wright one-off. Like Shane Wright in his last 10 games has been the fourth pick in the 22 draft that you expected. You know what I mean? So like, I don't think you need to full stack if you are power play stacking, say like Edmonton or Minnesota or whomever. You can use like Shane Wright and Tolvanen because they're on the same unit. Bjorkstrand's on the other unit. Not that this is a good power play spot at all, but just because of their price, Seattle 3 for me. Other than that, I'm out on Seattle. The Florida side is a little bit more interesting. Reinhart, Barkov, or Hagee are together at 22,100. And that's the issue in and itself, is their price. You know what I mean? Like Carolina 1 is a couple $100 cheaper. Colorado one's not much more expensive. Edmonton one's cheaper. Minnesota one's cheaper. They are fully correlated. It is a good power play spot. It's probably going to be a good 5-on-5 spot with going out against Stevenson. It's just a price thing, right? I think it's a good MME play. It's just hard to prioritize them over Colorado, Carolina, or Edmonton. If you want to, I think it is a good leverage spot. It's just, I don't know, man. Like, they're not my favorite of the spend up options. Could be famous last words here because it is a very good power play matchup, but it would be Florida 1 for me, Seattle 3. But, I'm not going to prioritize them in single entry.
Yeah. The problem for me is Seattle doesn't take penalties. Remember, a little earlier in the show, I was saying Edmonton doesn't take penalties like one of the other teams down for fewest power play opportunities given per game was Seattle over the last 6 weeks. In fact, I was looking the last 31 days specifically. Seattle has given up 20 power plays in their last 14 games. It's like 1.4 per game. Like, if Florida gets like one power play here tonight, I don't like the chances of paying off 22,000. Was it 22.6 on one power play? That they can get it done at 5-on-5. We've seen them do it. It's just asking a lot, especially with Joey Decord back. Like, if it was Grubauer starting, I would actually have some interest in Florida 1 here tonight, but it is going to be Decord. So, like, I think Florida's more of an MME play for me. If I was 20 maxing, I would be considering them. If I was 150, I would certainly have, 4 or 5%, maybe something at the most. Single entry, like you said, there are just other lines in that price range. It's like, do I want this line on the road against Joey Decord? And Seattle's been fine defensively and they don't take penalties, or do I want Colorado on the road? Do I want Edmonton at home? Like those types of things. So just kind of the way that I'm looking at it. So out on Florida, I think I agree with you on the Seattle side. Like Tolvanen and Wright, Bjorkstrand at 9K, Bjorkstrand's on the top power play unit. And that's actually kind of important because the power play has legitimately been good with Vince Dunn over the last couple of years. It's just when he's been hurt that it's kind of suffered. But otherwise it's been at least close to league average. And that's better than the Seattle power play, almost a lot better than it usually is. So I don't mind going down to that Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand right line again if you need some cheap stacks. What I will say is, like, obviously I'm not a fan of Chandler Stevenson. I think that's pretty well known. If it feels like him and McCann is a good duo, should be a good duo together, right? Stevenson's still a pretty good passer. McCann is easily their best goal scorer. Those two guys are both on the top power play unit. That line's cheap at 11,300. Stevenson's going to play a lot of minutes. McCann will probably get 17 plus. Going up against the Florida top line's not a good matchup, but Florida's penalty kill has been on a slide basically since the first month of the season. So if that keeps going, it's not a bad power play spot for them. I think there are a couple playable lines from Seattle here, but I think I would still just go back to Wright, Tolvanen, and Bjorkstrand and use them as a filler for more expensive lines like, Colorado, Edmonton, Toronto, Carolina, what have you. Yep,
I agree there. Let's talk about defensemen here. At the top of the board, we have Cale Makar at 8,300. Werenski 8,100, Quinn Hughes 7,700, Yossi 7,400. Honestly, I was shocked because I was looking at these top defensemen, right? In 29 games, Cale Makar has 87 shots. Like, that's a good rate. That's 3 shots per game. I was shocked to see that in 26 games, Quinn Hughes has 84 shots on goal. Like, he might have had like 84 shots in half the season last year in the second half. So, like, I don't mind Quinn Hughes here. Like, he has a better shot rate than Cale Makar does right now.
One thing, can I just jump in real quick? One thing I will say about that is Hughes did the exact same thing last year where he shot a lot for like the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season and then just tailed off to where he normally is for over the rest of the season. And he ended up with under 200 shots in a full year. This season, it's been kind of the same thing. I was looking his last 10 games, 6.6 shots per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, which isn't horrific. But if you look at his first 5 weeks of the season, he was at 9.4 shots. So basically 40% higher earlier in the season than he is now. It just seems like he's doing the exact same thing over again, where he shot a lot for 15 games and then just goes back to his, 2.25 shots per game or whatever. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. He also has that face shield too, so it's hard to see. So yeah, that makes sense. I was just a little bit surprised to see that. Obviously, Cale Makar is number one for me. They're in a great matchup. I think Yossi's fine. Like, if you don't want to play Nashville one chalk, I think playing Yossi is fine here. Werenski and Hughes are fine. I like Bouchard. I don't particularly love the top range outside of Makar, Yossi, Makar and Yossi, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was looking at the stochastic projections. They have Makar, Werenski, Yossi, 1, 2, 3. I have Makar, Yossi, Werenski, 1, 2, 3. So it's basically they're pretty close. So I think even factoring in his price, Cale Makar is a clear number one for me. The guy that's a little bit cheaper than those that I would probably think about is Evan Bouchard. It's just I think it's a solid matchup at home. And he is very volatile. I think we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, where he has a lot of games where he puts up 2.8 DK points, but then every 6 or 7 games he puts up a 30 bomb. And I think that's the kind of player that I really do like to roster in tournaments. So I do like Bouchard. I'm going to be honest. I think for defensemen tonight, it's probably a stars and scrubs night for me. That mid price range, that 4 to 6K range. Darnell Nurse is fine. Shane Gostisbehere is fine. Chris Letang is fine. Jake Wallman might have to block 12 shots here tonight. So I think he's fine. But it's the cheaper defenseman I like a lot better. Jordan Spence, I think, is min price still and is running the top power play for the Kings. Scott Perunovich, I just wrote about him today elsewhere, actually. But Scott Perunovich, he is min price as well, running the top power play for St. Louis. Jared Spurgeon, still getting some power play time. I think he's just fine. Emil Andre in what I think might be the best power play spot of the night. He's only 3,100. So there are some cheap power play defensemen to use here tonight. If you want to focus maybe more, because Perunovich isn't going to put up peripherals. So you're really hoping he can, get a couple of assists to really pay off. You kind of worry about the same thing with Emil Andre, but I think Gavrikov and Siegenthaler, if you're looking for some peripherals, are certainly in play. Nick Blankenberg is a guy that I'm keeping an eye on for Nashville, because Carrier is out. After Yossi and Shea, there just isn't a lot for them to play on defense. So I think Blankenberg might see a bump in minutes. Kevin Ball for Calgary might have to block a lot of shots here tonight. Nikita Zadorov for Boston has been regularly playing 20 plus minutes. I think he's fine. If you want to go play Shea, because Nashville's basically down to 2 defensemen, I think he's in play as well. And both Devin Taves and Dante Fabro are projecting pretty well over at Stochastic. So if you need somebody in that 3 to 4K range, I think Fabro and Taves are just fine.
Yep. That is Columbus Blue Jackets legend, Nick Blankenberg, by the way. Remember, he just got randomly priced up to 5,600 because he had those 3 weeks. He just went absolutely ham for the Blue Jackets. We'll never forget. The streets remember. Let's talk about the goalies. Demko's an interesting spend up option in GPPs. As Cliffy said, he was legitimately one of the best goalies over the past couple seasons. No idea what to expect from him tonight. I think that is an interesting GPP spend up, because I don't think I'm alone in the thought of no idea what to expect from him. I think Markstrom's okay at 8K. Darcy Kemper at 8K. UC Saros should be starting for Nashville. That does interest me at 7,900 because, as we always talk about, Calgary creates a lot of quantity, not a lot of quality. Philip Gustafsson also at 7,900 for me. Hellbuck, obviously. Spend down options. I think Sorokin at 7,400 is a bit interesting. Anthony Stolarz has been good for Toronto, also at 7,400. And if I need to go super cheap, it'd be Joey Decord.
Yeah, Saros, Gustafsson, and Hellbuck are at the top of my board. I think those are three goalies. Like if I'm spending up, like not super expensive, but spending up a little bit, those are the guys that I'm kind of looking for. And Saros and Hellbuck are first and third by stochastic projections. So seems we're kind of in agreement there. Cheaper guys, Sorokin for sure. Again, Islanders don't give up a ton of 5-on-5. So as long as they don't implode on the penalty kill, Sorokin should be able to have a good night. And Kings do have struggle scoring at times, and still they're kind of like the Calgary in that sense, where they can put up a lot of shots, not necessarily a lot of goals. I'll also say Karl Vejmelka. He's been really, really good for Utah, and I don't think anybody's going to be playing him here tonight. And as long as Utah's penalty kill doesn't fall apart and they don't spend the game parading to the penalty box, I think you could have a good night here.
That's fair. We will be back on Thursday. There's only one game tomorrow. Today, Thursday, Saturday this week. It's another short. It's one of those random NHL classics, 1-14, 2-14, 3. You know what I mean? So we will be back Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go an off-the-board Josh Harris special, and I'm going to go with Bobby Brink.
Bob Brink, baby. Get his hat trick in 9 minutes after being glued to the bench. I am going. I don't know who I'm going because I also had a flyer. We're just on the same page here. It was going to be Travis Konechny. I am going to go Sharon Govich, off the board Josh pick.
All right. I like it. Do those guys combine for 4 shots on goal here tonight? We'll find out.
You can, I'm sure Greg will bet it at -190. We're going to have those words. But no, we will be back on Thursday. Good luck, everybody. And we'll see you then.
Yeah. Good luck tonight, everybody.